Kevin texted us, and he wants to know, why does the Catholic Church believe Christ is really present in the Eucharist?
Well,
I can give you the short answer to that.
Because Jesus says
That's
so.
right.
But here's the thing. This is the belief. The Catholic Church believes it because this is the belief that has been handed down to us from the apostles who got it from Jesus Christ himself. I mean, they were there at the Last Supper when Jesus instituted the Eucharist. If you look, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, at the Last Supper, Jesus says, "This is my body. This is my blood," or the cup of my blood. He doesn't say this is symbolic of, this is sort of like, this is a metaphor for, or metaphor of.
I was going to say that was...
Yeah, I was like, that didn't sound good. A metaphor for. So he didn't say those things. He said, "This is my cup." And so when God says this is, who are we to say, excuse me, Jesus, but no, it's not. It is not. So that's one thing. Number two, so that's the first three Gospels. In the fourth Gospel, John, we see the Eucharist being talked about in John 6, and people say, oh, well, Jesus was talking symbolically there. Well, if you read carefully and contextually, you find that everyone who heard Jesus on that day say what he said about eating my flesh and drinking my blood in order to have eternal life. He says, my flesh is real food, my blood is real drink. The Jews understood him to be speaking literally. His own disciples, many of whom walked away from him, understood him to be speaking literally. The apostles understood him to be speaking literally. No one took him as speaking symbolically or metaphorically. Excuse me. And if you look in John 6:51, Jesus says the bread that he wants to give us to eat, which he then goes on and talks about, is he talking about a symbol in John 6:51? He says that bread that he wants to give us to eat is the flesh which he will give for the life of the world. When did he give his flesh for the life of the world? On the cross. So the question, anyone who believes Jesus is that the Eucharist is merely a symbol and that Jesus was speaking symbolically in John 6, verses 51 through 58, you have to believe that Jesus' flesh on the cross was merely a symbol, maybe like a hologram or something, because Jesus said the bread he wants to give us to eat is the flesh which he will give for the life of the world. He gave his flesh for the life of the world on the cross. So was that flesh real or was it symbolic? If the flesh on the cross was real, then everything he's talking about in John 6:51 through 58 is real. It's his real flesh, his real blood. If the flesh on the cross was symbolic, then hey, yeah, Jesus was talking about his symbolic flesh. But I don't know of a Christian alive who believes that Jesus' flesh on the cross was symbolic. And then you go to Paul, 1 Corinthians 10 and 11, he talks about, the Eucharist. He says, when you eat, you're getting sick and some are dying because you're not discerning the Lord's body. Well, how can you discern the Lord's body if it's not the Lord's body? If it's merely a symbol, if it's just a piece of bread or a cup of wine. So everything in the Bible points to the Eucharist being truly the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And then you throw in sacred tradition, which we have had passed down to us from the apostles themselves for 2,000 years, that said this is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. All of that is why we as Catholics believe the Eucharist is truly Jesus' body and blood.